Hey, welcome to the first of you who are signing on to our webinar this morning slash, it's still morning for everybody who's watching this. Welcome aboard. We're going to get started in just a moment, but we are going to be waiting for everyone to just have a moment to settle in. If you need a moment to get up, stretch your legs, if you're coming from a previous meeting, or if you need to grab some water, please feel free to do so. We will get started in just a couple of minutes here. And if you are all good to go and ready to roll, please just head over to the chat and let us know what your name is and where you are from. We will have another opportunity in a little bit to do that, but it's always nice to be able to chat with people from across the country during these webinars. Thank you, Jennifer, for getting us started. Coming from Atlanta, I have quite a few friendly colleagues who have worked in Atlanta or currently work in Atlanta. So it's always good to hear their stories from that school district. We've got Nina from, so many people started talking, it scrolled out of you. Looks like Mississippi. We've got Boston, Arizona, Milwaukee. My mom is from Milwaukee, the Milwaukee area. We've got New York, Maryland. I taught in Baltimore right out of college, and Tacoma, Washington. Literally, I think we almost hit every single time zone already. Looks like we got Florida in the house. We got Charleston, South Carolina. I've got friends who are working there as well. Awesome. All right, we're going to give them one more minute to sign on. Once again, if you need to get up, stretch, grab some water, do whatever you need to do. Please do so in the next minute or so, because once we get started, we're going to want to really be focused and having a good conversation amongst ourselves. If you are looking for navigating organizational transitions, you are in the right place. This is a topic that I am very interested in and hope you are as well. Looking forward to this conversation today. We got more Tacoma, Washington. Welcome, Annette. We've got a lot of people signing on already. This is a topic of great conversation, which we are not surprised. These topics that we do for these webinars do not come out of nowhere. They are topics that we find because we are listening to the people that we are working with. We have our ear to our clients and people like yourself. They let us know what are some things that you're thinking about, you're working on, trying to problem solve through. And this one, talking about transitions within a district or within a building, is something that we hear about all of the time. And luckily, it is something that I am very passionate about, and I'm excited to discuss with you today. All right, I've stalled long enough. We're going to get started now. So once again, welcome to Navigating Organizational Transitions. We're going to talk about some best practices for district leaders this morning. Hello, James. Welcome. Thank you. So let's get this started. If you are new to the Education Elements family, and this is your first time going to one of our webinars, we are a company that believes that schools grow when people grow. So this conversation that we are going to have today is going to be a very people-centered conversation, because transitions are scary times for everybody, and we want to get into that mindset before we start thinking about what that transition actually looks like. So we're going to make sure that people stay at the center of our conversation. But a little bit about Education Elements. We are a consultant group. We have close to 50 consultants. We live all over the country, and we serve school districts all over the country. I think we're in 48 out of 50 states at the current moment, but we have done all 50 at a point. We work on a number of things, which we'll talk about later, from instructional, improving your instructional practices, helping district leaders out through their growth, but also other sort of strategies like your strategic plan, your visioning, all sorts of things. But at the center of it is the people, and that's why this conversation is going to be so rich, I think, today. a little bit about me. My name is Nick Esposito. I have been working at Education Elements for a number of years now. I am a senior consultant at the company, and you'll see me all over the country working with school districts. I've been in Minnesota and Arkansas and Texas. Currently, right now, I am working a lot in the state of New York. So if you are one of our New York attendees today, throw me a line. Maybe I'll be in your neck of the woods sometime soon. I currently live in New Jersey. Outside of education, I love to play ice hockey. And I also have written a series of children's books, which I am always happy to talk about, even though I will not do so right now. So that's a little bit about me. But now I want to talk about today and the conversation we're going to have. So like I said, transitions are scary no matter who you are within the educational ecosystem of your district. So that's why the first essential question that we want to tackle today is what mindsets do people have during transitions? Because the more that we understand what those mindsets are, the more effective and efficient the plan that we are going to make is going to be. So that'll be the second essential question. What are those building blocks of an effective transition plan? And I'm going to share it to you within 3 phases that I have seen work in districts that we have served. So a few, housekeeping items. Once again, if you are joining us since James posted in the chat, please let us know where you are coming from today, and we would love to continue that conversation in the chat. If there's something that I say that is either super controversial, which I don't anticipate happening, please let me know in the chat. But if it's something that you really enjoy or something that you think, that's interesting, can you talk about that more? Please let me know. Throw an emoji in, do a +1, something, so I know. It helps me curate the conversation to meet your needs a little bit. Because after all, right now, it's just me talking to myself with you guys in the chat. So definitely love that participation. All right, let's just catch up in the chat. We've got Syracuse in the house. I work in Syracuse, so welcome. We got New York City for sure. Morristown. I said I'm from New Jersey. Rochester, I'm there all the time. Durham, North Carolina. It's one of the most important cities in the country to me. That's where my wife and I started dating. So I will talk about that another podcast, another podcast of myself, but. No, you're good, Jessica. We will make sure that all of the materials for today are going to be emailed out afterwards. All right. So now enough of talking about me. Let's talk about all of you. So we're talking, you guys are coming from all sorts of places geographically, but I want to talk about where you're coming from in terms of what you want to get out of today. And I have a few guesses. So you're here today because you are potentially a school or district leader who is preparing for your own exit, right? You know that you're about to retire. Maybe there's a job you want to move into, or maybe you have to move because of your family situation, but something is taking you away from your current role, and you want to make sure that your district is well prepared for that transition. You also might be in today because you are a leader who is actually inheriting one of those roles, and you are feeling maybe a little bit overwhelmed and want to know, how can I help this transition go a little bit smoother so I can start getting my priorities and my agenda taken care of as soon as possible. Or you might not be a leader at all, and you might just be someone who's working in a district or in a school building who is going through a transition, and you are saying, well, this is really messy. What can I do from my position to maybe smooth things out? So those are my guesses when I reflected upon this webinar. But there are also things I'm sure I missed. So if there is another reason, please put that in the chat. So I'm going to take a break from talking for just a moment as we get ready to really get this party started. But I would love to hear from you. If you haven't already, let me know the role or district that you're calling from, right? And then more importantly, what brings you in today? Because like I said, it really helps me curate the conversation, knowing who is in the call. So I'm going to take a break. You take a look at that, and I'll monitor the chat as you let us know. Thank you so much. We've got Puerto Rico in the house. Jennifer, thank you for getting us started. You are number three. You are someone who is just a part of the organization who is interested in transitions. We got Bartola from Brookline, Massachusetts. One of my friends is calling from there, is living there right now. And Annette is all three reasons. And Annette, you're kind of cheating because that's where I'm headed with this conversation. Um, of course, we're going to be paying attention to all three of these mindsets. More people. Yes, of course, Tanya, I can go back to the options. We've got number three, pondering options. We've got Florida in the house. But yeah, here are the options once again. Are you a leader who's on their way out? Are you a leader who's on their way in? Or are you just a bystander just trying to figure out what the heck is happening right now in my district? I want to get some clarity. That might be you. Or it could be for something completely different. Let us know in the chat. Awesome. Thank you all. There's a lot of obviously a lot of diversity in the answers here. And the reason that this is a topic that is really important to me is because at Education Elements, we get to work with school districts everywhere, like I said. And my favorite part of the job is I get to become very close with the people who are working in the superintendent chair, principals, district, cabinet people, teachers, right? And as we get close, like I might be working on something like personalized learning with them, but then the superintendent comes along and says, you know what? Hey, I'm actually on my way out. Like, what can you do? Can you help me strategize this? And then we get to roll up to our sleeves together and really work on that solution for the district to make sure that everyone is feeling comfortable. So I get the fact that everybody is coming at it, putting different numbers in the chat. Oh, Christine, that is really rough. Closing your school and that transition piece. So I hope that through this conversation, we can really scratch everyone's itches when it comes to this topic. And I think it's important for us to know as we kind of just stop for a second and talk about the diversity of the mindsets that people are having, right? That is what every single district goes through. There are people everywhere that have their own opinions, feelings, anxieties about the transition. And that's why having a really strong transition plan is so important, so we can mitigate all of those feelings. So we've done that. And that's why I'm going to transition now to the transition mindset. So I need your help right now in the chat as we set the table for rolling out what a transition plan can really look like in just a moment. So what we're going to do is go through each of those three personas that I had shared, and I would love for you to zip yourself into that mindset. If you are the leader who is preparing to transition out, whether this is you or not, I want you to think on their behalf. What are some of your priorities and what are your feelings that you have going into that transition? So as someone who is leaving their district or leaving their role, what are your priorities and what are your feelings? If you wouldn't mind just putting some of those in the chat, we will be able to kick off the conversation just like that. Bill, cheating. Did you have access to the slides beforehand, Bill? That is definitely going to be one of the things we talk about in just a second. Thank you for getting us started. Angela, working on the culture piece of it. Yes, you want to make sure that the culture is preserved. That is something we will also talk about. Yes, Trisha, we are worried about that as well. Preserve historical knowledge, Jennifer. Kathleen, you're talking about the idea of the workflow. Like we don't want things to like screech to a halt because no one knows where the copier is or the paper clips are. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure we cover that. All right. I got to say, as I was very excited to put this together, because this is something that like I said, this is a topic that I really care about, but I feel a little vindicated in the chat because a lot of the things we're about to talk about are things that you are all mentioning. So I'm glad we hit the right chord as we go here. Christine says, remembering her why. Love that. Bartola back. Most of the things that we have done are changing, understanding those feelings. Jessica in retirement. People trying to bother you. Yes, like we got to talk through that role a little bit. So I tried to boil this particular person's feelings and priorities down into three main things. We're going to fill this whole chart out in just a second. But the first thing that I have experienced with superintendents who are going through this transition is they want to make sure that they have built their legacy, right? They have given their heart, their heart, their blood, their sweat, their tears for this district, whether it be in the superintendent's chair, maybe they were a principal or a cabinet member, maybe they started as a teacher way back when, and they want to make sure that all of the work that they did has a lasting impact. So that's number one. And so therefore, the feeling that comes along with that priority is nostalgia for the good old days, all the things that we've done together. Number two, I think it was Bill who started us off, right? Like, I want to make sure that I'm taking care of my colleagues because no matter when you choose to leave the job, you are going to be leaving midstream, right? Like, our job as educators is never finished, it's never complete, there's never a mission accomplished, right? It's always going to be something new. So at some point, you're going to have to say, I just got to leave now. And because of that, you're going to feel a sense of guilt, this twinge of guilt, and it's completely understandable. So we're going to try to mitigate that. And then a lot of people just said, hey, we want to make sure that the work that we were working on, that it's at a good resting place if we can, that the systems are in place, that everybody knows what they're doing so that they can continue on in a smooth and easy way. Okay. We've got a lot of people joining in the chat. This is probably the most active chat I have had in one of these webinars in quite some time. So I appreciate you all to get things started. Thank you so much. All right, now let's take another look at another type of leader. You are now a leader who is coming into the district. What are some of your priorities and some of your feelings? Most likely, they are going to be different than the person who is exiting that role. So just take maybe 30 seconds to type your answer into the chat. Kathy, thank you. Dr. Kathy, thank you. How do I communicate effectively to the school community? Communication is going to be a big part of our conversation today. That is definitely something, as someone who's coming into the district, is worried. Like, does my communication style match the communication style of my predecessor? Is it better? Is it worse? All of that. Jessica says, want to build a trope. Don't mean to do that. Trust and credibility, understand the culture, building relationships, current state, all of these things we are going to be talking about. Project management, want to get that off the board. What is going well? Building new relationships and trust. You guys are probably the best audience that I've had in quite some time, because you hit every one of my talking points right away. So I'm going to move on to them, right? As a new person coming in, right, my priority is to learn about the current state. Like someone said, what's going well, what needs improvement. But because of that, the phrase that we often hear from, new leaders is, I feel like I'm drinking out of a fire hose. And that is a very overwhelming feeling. There are a lot of things to be learning. And because of that, you're going to feel like, you're like, do I even know what I'm doing in this job? And the answer is you do. But right now you have a lot of, learning to do. And that feeling feels like you're on ice skates, and it's not great to be in that state for very long. So you feel very overwhelmed. All right. Number two, while you're learning, you're also like, I also need to show that I can add value, that I'm the guy or the lady who is here because I have something to bring. I've got a fresh perspective. I've got all of these, right? But you also know that people are going to be second guessing every single move you have just because you are simply new. And because of that, I can understand if you feel as a leader a little bit of imposter syndrome there. Like, can I add value to this group? The answer is, of course you can. But right now in the beginning, it might not feel that way. And then finally, you probably just came from a district where you had like a lot of friends, you had a lot of people who had your back, and now you see a lot of strangers, and you want to try to get that period of time where we go from being strangers to being friends or being great colleagues, being allies. You want to shrink that time frame as much as you can. We want to rally those allies together because the more people you have in your corner, the more effective you're going to be, of course, as a leader in the early going. All right, last time, and then we're going to actually get into the planning. I want to talk to all the people who put the third option down there. You are a part of a group that is experiencing a transition. You are part of the group now. What are your transition priorities? How are you feeling, knowing that a lot of it is out of your hands? I'm going to take a sip of water while you put something in the chat. All right. Thank you, Jennifer, for getting us started. Understand new leaders' vision, maintain procedures. Definitely what we're going to talk about in a second. Thank you for getting us started. Bill, love that, right? I mean, we've all been there where it's like, hey, I am worried about like a zillion different things, but then you have to check yourself and you're like, well, I only really can impact these three things. So I'm going to worry about those. When they want me to know about this information, they will tell me, and then I'll worry about it then. That's a tough thing, but it's an important thing for people to do. Christine is worried about, team dynamics, that sense. Yes, love that. Clarity of the purpose, grounding out our why. That's been a good, theme or thread throughout our conversation today. Wilfredo says reach a sense of stability and normalcy, right? On the verge of reaccreditation. Oh yeah, just in general, but reaccreditation, of course, you're going to be having some of these worries. So thank you all for participating in the chat. So for me, I had a few things. One is you've got this new person coming in. They're going to come in with some of their culture that they, just left. And that's going to, of course, clash with some of our culture, right? And because of that, it is very easy and tempting to have a little bit of this like tribal mentality. It's us versus them. And that's never a good feeling, right? Because you don't want to feel like your culture is being disrespected. You don't want to feel like you're being forced to change when you didn't really want to change, right? We get that feeling, but ultimately we need to come to a common ground, a unified ground at some point. All right, number two I had put down was you're waiting for change. I think, once again, Bill, thank you again. You had said in the chat that, I got to control things that I can control, right? I'm in a state of waiting right now. And because of that, especially veteran people who have been around a lot, they're probably looking like, yeah, I've been through superintendents before. I'm just going to wait to see how this guy flames out or what this person does or see what actually sticks. And there's that skepticism that actually gets in the way of our true progress. And then finally, understand orientation. I think a lot of people had talked about like, what's our vision? What's our why? Like, what do we really care about now as a district? That disorientation can be very anxiety inducing for people who this transition is out of their control. So I appreciate you letting me take some time for us to talk about the feelings and the priorities of everyone involved, because that is how we can really formulate a strong transition plan. So don't take that part, what we just did, for granted. Don't think it's like frou-frou or Nick was just doing it because he wanted to, talk about feelings, right? No, it's something that's really important that can help inform the transition planning as you move forward. So here is our 3x3 that we are going to be checking in on as we go through our plan in just a moment here. I think I want to pause here and just like point something out to everybody as you just kind of let this concept wash over you. For each one of these priorities and those associated feelings that people might be having during the transition, they cut two each of them cut two ways, right? Each of them, I'm not going to go through all of them, right? But for example, the being skeptical of a new leader or a new regime, that is a good thing, right? In a lot of cases, right? I'm not just going to say yes to every new thing that someone says. I want to have a skeptical or an analytical eye on those changes and be able to speak up when I don't think it's in line with where success will come, right? But skeptical also can get in the way of progress and the team gelling because you are being skeptical for skepticism's sake, right? So both of them, they cut both ways. Nostalgia is great because that means that what we did was worth it. But nostalgia also keeps us from formulating new friendships, new bonds, new plans. And so it's important for us as leaders to not look at these things while they all kind of look negative or bad. They also do have a place and a value to you as a leader as you're going through this transition. So I want to take a moment just to call that out. All right. A couple of things just about transitions in general, right? I was trying to think of an analogy. I'm a big metaphor guy when I, do these, and um, you know, transitions are a lot like quicksand, right? So pardon the lengthy metaphor, right? But they are situations that are constantly developing. They are always going to be anxiety inducing, even the good ones, right? So then I started Googling quicksand and how to survive, right? So to survive, it is important to not thrash in all different directions, but rather, because that's going to actually make it worse. You need to stay calm. Instead, you need to stay calm. You need to look around you, see what structures that you have. Is it a branch? Is it a friend's hand? Is it just the dry sand on the outside of this little pit? And then what they say is instead be calm and then kick in one direction, because if you kick in one direction, that's what loosens up the sand and you'll be able to emerge safely. But most importantly, it is important to note that despite what the movies will tell you, quicksand hardly ever really helps someone drown, right? Like no one drowns because of quicksand like you see in the movies. So just letting you know that transitions, while scary, they do pass. And you just want to make sure that it is as smooth as humanly possible. The theme of transition, quicksand, is going to probably come up, hint, hint, in a little bit. But wanted to just start there. And some ways that we can mitigate this is by having an efficient transition plan. So before I get into our plan for today, I wanted to put we're going to drop in the chat right now 2 resources that I wanted to share with you at this point. One of our colleagues, Layla, she had a great blog post about rallying a team around this transition, and that blog post is definitely worth a read. The content of that is what you see here on the screen. You're going to be able, there it is in the chat right now. It's how do we clarify our vision and expectations? How are we going to be strategically recruiting? And how do we invest in professional development the right way? So that blog post, really good, informative, easy and quick read. Check it out. And then the second thing is Layla also got together with a panel of superintendents from across the country to talk about transitions. And that is the second link that just got dropped into the chat. So obviously don't stop right now to watch it, but once we're done, check that out so you can see more information about this topic. Okay, so thank you. Yeah, we'll take care of that. Oh yes, it looks like it went through to the host and panelists, but we will take care of that in just a second, Jessica. Yeah, so the blog post and the panel, that is going to be coming in just a second. All right. So once again, here's our 3x3. Here are the priorities, and here are our feelings that we are going to use. Notice the title of this slide has changed. Instead of leading with empathy, now we're actually using the empathy, using the things that we've learned to add value to that transition. All right. A couple of news and notes of what we're going to be doing right now. The first is the notes, I guess. The notes. One, a transition plan does not belong to the individual or to the leader, right? But it actually belongs to the ecosystem. And that is going to be really important when we talk about phase 1 in just a second. Number 2, transitions must be made every single time someone new either enters or leaves an organization. It sounds exhausting to think about, but every single time you lose, whether it be a principal or a teacher or a cabinet member, superintendent, anytime someone leaves, the dynamics of the group changes, the responsibilities and the roles need to be shifted, they need to be named, we need to norm so that we can have that efficiency. If we take it for granted, that's when gray area starts to emerge, and in that gray area, tension starts to lead to some problems, and we don't want that to be the case. And then finally, one thing that I really this epiphany that I came to last year when talking to a few superintendents who were on their way out, I said this transition plan really needed to be in place long before you actually knew that you wanted to leave. So we want to make sure that we talk through all of that today in our time in the second half of our time together. So the phases that we're going to talk about for the rest of our time is phase one. We are going to be talking about the strategy of transition, the systems that we use within the district, and the norms that are established already. That phase one actually, believe it or not, happens before you even make the hire of the new person. Phase two, this is your first 100 days. Now you've hired the person's getting ready to start. Now they've got 100 days to do a lot of learning and a lot of communicating, trust building, and all of that. And then finally, we want to make sure that in phase three, the new leader, the new regime is building that momentum through progress monitoring, effective storytelling, etc. Okay, so let's begin phase one. If you have any questions, if you want me to, pause, go back, do anything, please just shout out in the chat. So let's talk about what are the goals of phase one. And like I said, this actually happens once you as a leader, so this is for like the group one people from earlier today. If you know that you are leaving, once you say, like, you tell the board, you tell maybe the cabinet team around you, you say, look, I'm going to retire at the end of this year. Right then, that's when phase one kicks off. Don't wait until like the hiring process has started or whatever. It's right then. So our goals during phase one is to enhance the systems and procedures that we already use every single day within the district, right? The goal there is to really smooth out the transitions and make sure that we are functioning as a, high functioning team. Number two, can we develop a standardized method that can be adopted by leaders and people in the future so that we can establish to our priorities? And the reason that we do that is the importance of this phase. Number one, it provides an accurate picture of reality. I was working with a school district last year. The leader knew that he was going to be, transitioning out. And we started talking about, right, like, who does what here in the cabinet? And the people within the cabinet actually have, been in the district for quite a long time. So therefore, as you all know, right, like over the years, you start picking up like different little side responsibilities that really aren't written down anywhere, but you're the right person for the job, so you're doing it. We also, when that leader was transitioning out, their secretary, who's been with them for decades, that leader suddenly that secretary was like, you know what? It's a good time for me to retire as well. Okay, well, that secretary, as you all know, a secretary knows everything that is happening and does a lot of great things within the team, the district, the school, what have you. So how do we know what she does? Because when we hire that secretary, we're going to have a job description that isn't going to match all of the amazing things that veteran secretary was doing. So what happens to all those responsibilities? They fall through the cracks. So that's the first thing, is we want to paint an accurate picture of reality. During this phase, we also want to minimize the domino effect. I was in another district where, so the superintendent's leaving, their assistant sup, or whatever you call that position in your district, that they were hoping to take over the big chair. Okay, well then what happens to the assistant superintendent role? And then what happens to the leader of curriculum and instruction who's going to take that role, and so on and so forth. So it turns out when you're transitioning one person, you're actually not. You're transitioning like maybe 3 or 4 or 5. We see this happen all of the time when it comes to yes, thank you, Jennifer. Human capital, the idea of that succession planning, we need to have that build, like almost like a minor league baseball team. You're building a pipeline of leaders within your district. We see that all the time in schools, right? All right, the principal is leaving, or maybe the assistant principal left. Okay, well, do you have anybody in your building who is ready to step up? The answer is probably yes, but if you haven't taken the time to actually put that succession planning in place, then you're going to be in trouble. All right. Number three, the more that we can standardize, the more that the unknowns we can make known, the more that we can flatten out the curve, the learning curve for new leaders, right? They will love you for this. So let's try to make sure we can. So by the time we leave phase one of the work, so this is prior to even the person being hired, it's the cabinet team or the district team. They are rolling up their sleeves. They're paying attention to all of the responsibilities of everyone. What are our systems? What are all of those things? And the things that you want to have as your deliverables are right there listed, right? We want an updated roles and accountabilities for the cabinet. Something simple, not overwhelming, just something simple and clear. Okay. What is the current and what should be the future coaching support with a mentorship model, right? So who's going to be helping the new superintendent in their position? Okay, well then how are we going to coach up this person who's taking the new role? Exactly. Number three, teaming with those norms and practices. What are some of the things that we do? What are our practices? How do we run things? How do we communicate about things? Just put it all on the table. So when the new leader comes in, they can say, I love this. I love that. This is where we can improve. This is where we need to make a shift. This is where I want to put my special stamp on it. And that is really, really valuable for a new leader who comes in, because that way they can actually they can value what existed a lot easier because they know what existed beforehand. And then finally, I think this is important. I stole this from the client that I was working with, which is what is your initial draft? And we were working for this district. What is like our portrait of a leader that we have? Like, what are we looking for in terms of our hire? We want someone who's a good communicator, maybe someone who has like their hand in finance, a person who's also got an experience with curriculum and instruction. Like, what are the things that we really value in the cabinet positions that we're trying to fill? Okay, so that's the importance of this phase, and those are the things that you definitely want to walk away from when coming through phase one. I'm going to take a quick just pause of me talking so you can read this next one. During phase one, what are some milestones? What are some key actions? And what is the value add that this phase can produce? So just take a moment and you can read it, and then I'll do a little bit of a synopsis in just 1 second. When I take a look at milestones, the one that I really want to just highlight for just a moment was that last one, right? It's tough. Like, we all talked about that legacy building. Recommendations for someone who might not take them is a tough thing, right? Like, oh, they don't respect my opinion. Well, no, they do. Just they got to make sure that they're synthesizing all of it. And that's going to be what happens in phase two. But right now in phase one, the best thing that you can do to help the rest of the people move on and transition is provide those recommendations for what you think needs to happen in the next 30 days, the next 3 months, the next 6 months. This really will help them understand, all right, what are our priorities as a district? What's our strategic plan look like? What's the status of each of those things? Really helps the new folks move forward. Okay. I think it's important that you're gathering input from all of the people who are working in the district. Let them know, like, what is the legacy that they want to have? What do they want to accomplish by the time you leave? And then finally, like for the value add, right? Do you have a plan to restructure anything if needed? What are some of the goals for each department? What are your PD goals right now? And all of those things, the more that you can just have on the table in a nice, clean spot, the next person will be set up for success. All right. Like I promised, we're going to go back to that 3x3 that we talked about just a second and gut check ourselves. Have we accomplished any of these things or any of those feelings through the plan that we've done so far? So, number one, for the exiting leader, right? Did we tie up loose ends? We tied up loose ends, right? We have now taken a look at all of our systems, all of our processes. We've looked at all of our job descriptions, roles and responsibilities. Nothing's gonna, feel like slip through the cracks there because of that. We feel a sense of urgency when we are tying up loose ends because we have a limited amount of time. So you don't necessarily get to all of these things, but the more that you can tie up, the more you're going to feel like you did your job in terms of preparing the next group, right? Now, this is a strange one because you would think that learn about current state is going to be in the next one, but I think you do such a service for the next regime if you get it done in phase one. The more that you can put all of the learnings together, their learning will be so much smoother, which is what they need to really hit the ground running. They won't feel as overwhelmed when that new leader joins the fray. And then finally, it is very difficult for teachers, for leaders, principals, anybody who's going through the transition to not have anxiety. So the way that we can do it is say, you know what, this is what we believe. These are the systems and processes that you can, hold on to, that we know that are going to survive, right? The more that we can do that, the more people are not going to be worried every single second about what is and is not going to be happening in the future. All right. Let's get to phase two. We are exactly on time right now, which I am very proud of because that does not always happen when you talk about things you're excited about. But phase two is the first 100 days. So at this point now, you have hired the new person. They are getting themselves like on campus or in the district, and they're ready to hit the ground running. So what you want to do through this transition plan is we want to support that new leadership team through those first 100 days. Your job is to facilitate and steer that comprehensive process of learning. So are we setting up strong feedback loops for them to get to know people and understand? And then finally, your job as a new regime is to make sure that you are fostering a sense of community and trust, right? And that's where, just being an open-minded leader comes so in handy. If you come in and you are just saying like, this is the way it's going to be, I know best, you're going to lose a lot of people right away. Doesn't mean you can't add value, but it does mean that you respect the voices of the people who have been there, that care so much about the district that you are now a part of. So why is this stage important? I've already talked about it a little bit. The more voices you engage, the more trust you build. It's not just like kissing babies and shaking hands, right? It's the idea of you're really listening to what they're saying, understanding what the current reality is for people, because that's going to paint a picture that you don't see in the documents that the team put together during phase one. Number two, nothing slips through the cracks, right? We want to make sure that if we have, I do a lot of strategic planning in my job here at Education Elements, and each one of those priorities is going to live on with or without the new leader. So we want to make sure that they are all ready to go. And if the leader doesn't know about those things, someone's going to miss something, and we're going to lose that momentum that we're trying to build with a new regime. And then finally, you want to add value as a team. Like if you as a leader have the ability to create to create value, you are going to get people to buy in, right? Those skeptics that are like, I'm going to wait and see if this guy's got what it takes. Well, the guy does have what it takes, but you only know that if they start to do things that are adding value. Our key deliverables for this section, the first 100 days, like a vision, maybe even a plan, the communication plan. Somebody had mentioned it in the chat earlier. 100%. Be very clear. Don't just say like, we're going to send out an email now, I think. If you're going to say you're going to send an email out, send the email out, letting people know these are the things that we really, really care about. This is the direction that we're heading in. It makes everyone feel better. And then number three, the implementation roadmap. This is our theory of action, and now we're moving forward. Speaking of which, right? These are some of the things that we want to talk about in those plans. So in our 100 days, what are some things you want to check off? Do you know all of the roles of the new regime you are now learning, right? Do I know how things are governed around here? What are the roles of everybody? What is our current strategy? What are our policies? Have I got a firm handle on what the state of curriculum and instruction, is something new in the pipeline? Like we got a new social studies curriculum we're flushing out right now. Like what are the things that people are working on that I can add value to quite easily? Number four, get the board obviously on your side early. Listen to them. They obviously are the ones who hired you, so you've got a little bit of like juice in the bank. But like just continue to foster that relationship. They want to be a part of the conversation, of course. But you want to understand like what the the politics are behind that. And then finally, have you considered how you're communicating to everybody in the district? And then what are the value adds? Your job during those that 100 days is you are learning, right? You are learning and you are listening, but you are also trying to add value. So that's why I want you to pay attention to that first bullet point, right? Leadership team is able to synthesize their learnings into a single coherent message or mission and message. Very often, I have seen leaders who are like, I'm doing my tour, I'm doing a lot of listening and learning, and then nobody knows exactly what it is you learned and what you listened to, right? But this way, you're like, you know what? I'm going to tell everybody based off of my 100 days of learning, I've realized that these are our strengths. These are the areas that we can improve. This is what I've done in the past. And this is our unified direction moving forward. Um, yes, Jennifer. Yeah, we don't often get the 100 days. That's my stand-in for like the first chunk of time. You can decide whatever it is your strategic onboarding plan allows. Um, but the idea that you are going to be actually sharing with people, this is what I learned, and this is how I'm actually using that knowledge to make your life better. That is how we then take care of a few of the feelings that we've talked about today. So, number one, through this, you are taking care of your colleagues, right? You have now set the new leader up for success. You don't need to feel guilty because a lot of your priorities are now taken care of. They know what they're responsible for, so check. Right. Number two, through learning, you're not telling people what it is, how great you are, and all the things that you're doing, but you're rather trying to find out who are these people, the diamonds in the rough in the district that I could really use as an ally. This one principal is awesome. They're going to be my testing ground for that campus is going to be my testing ground for new ideas because I really connect with them. They're a capable and dynamic leader, right? Those types of relationships, the more of a team that you can build, the better. And then number three, by showing people that you are listening to them and then also doing something with that knowledge, you are going to turn those skeptics into a real asset for you. Because then they'll suddenly be like, hey, let me tell you something. This actually isn't really working out really well. I have this suggestion for, suddenly it's more about how to get it better instead of just complaining about it, which we've all been a part of. So stop me, by the way, if you have any questions or thoughts. Appreciate all of the comments in the chat. But I want to get on to phase three now so that we can finish up listening to you for a second. So phase three is my favorite phase because that is the time that we get to, yes, Jennifer, the idea of talking, like the communication plan, like the skeptics, allies, colleagues, like you can swap in, people in and out of the district itself, 100%. So in phase three, it's my favorite one because it is our time to build momentum. Now, like you're not the new guy on the block. You have the training wheels are off. This is really your team, your show, and it's fun to see people start to flourish. So you're establishing norms with the way that you like to run things, keeping in mind the way they used to do it, the way that you used to do it, and what is best for the future. And then number two, refining those existing structures. How are we going to develop people? And then start to build that pipeline for future leaders in the district, right? That's what we're trying to do in phase three. So in this phase, the reason that we do it is we want to make sure that the new leaders who are taking over, it's not the new leaders aren't saying like, this guy really gave me such a bad deck of or a hand of cards to work with here. No, this is your hand of cards now. So it's your responsibility to, right? Like we want to make sure that we are transitioning to a we mentality. And most importantly, through progress monitoring, my favorite thing to do in my work. I just had a school district send me an article. Our work got into their local newspaper. How can you, as a new leader, take those priorities, take those leaders, those campuses, all the things that you're doing every single day, and finding ways to celebrate them publicly, How are you telling the story of the progress? A lot of the progress might not be your work, but you can almost kind of take a little bit of credit for it by showcasing all of the great things that are happening in the district. So make sure that you are showing how you can tell that story. Super important, and it's often overlooked. Our key deliverables. What are our goals and metrics? Be very clear with people. This is what I expect of all of these groups as we move forward. How are we going to progress monitor for those 100 days? Are we going to ask people like, hey, how am I doing? Right? Those types of conversations, super important. And then number three, ongoing support for those school level supports, professional development, and that celebration of what has been accomplished within your district that year. Okay. When it comes to phase three, we want to examine current data, uh, figure out what are those data points that you really care about, pay attention to them, analyze them, not just by yourself, but with the allies that you've brought together. Make sure that those goals are explicit. Uh, what I love about this stage is now that you've got, in phase two, you've got your 100-day plan, you've done a lot of learning, and based off of that learning, you now have a plan, right? These are my priorities, these are my values as a leader. Okay, now what are the metric now in phase three? What are those metrics that are going to point us in the right direction, that we're going to know that we're on the right track? Number one. Number two, how can I connect people to professional learning opportunities that help them succeed with my expectations, right? And then finally, strategies to celebrate it when they do exceed your expectations, even the small wins. All right. Finally, I want to take a look at our empathy check for phase three. At this point, the transition hopefully has been completed. Things that you cared about have lived on. As a exiting leader, you can go to a beach somewhere and relax. You can remember all of the great nostalgic times, but you've done your job in terms of like solidifying that legacy. Number two, as a leader, you have gone from being not even thought of in phase one to now learning in phase two to really adding value and building momentum in phase three, right? You're not an imposter. You're doing a good job. And then number three, you have you hopefully got that tribal mentality, but now you are all part of that one tribe. And that is a really big success in phase three. So I'm going to take a quick break. We're not wrapping up just yet. But in the chat, I would love to know which of these phases do you feel like your district needs to prioritize most right now? Mhm. Okay, Jennifer, thank you for kicking us off again and being so active in the chat. Yes, who does what? And once again, I will reiterate for everyone, that is something that is an action or an activity that should happen, even before you realize a transition needs to happen, right? The reality is transitions happen in our school districts every single year, guaranteed, whether it be a big job like a superintendent or a principal or just, your third grade math teacher, right? Transitions are always happening. So having plans in place so that when transitions do happen, people aren't like nervous waiting to see what happens. They know what happens. This is the playbook that we do to get the job done. We go through these three phases. So if you can be more proactive about it, have those things taken care of, we can really mitigate a lot of the anxiety that comes with transitions. Margaret, thank you so much. Phase one, review priorities and responsibilities. Yes. And the reason, once again, the reason that is such a challenging phase is because those things are often these gray areas that we take for granted, right? These people who are doing things way above their pay grade, or they're just really good at them, and we don't exactly know that they are even doing it. Got to make the unknowns known in phase one for sure. Nina says phase two. Yep, that's a good one as well. Thank you, James, for taking notes for us. Um, I'm just reading Christine's. Yes, absolutely, Christine. You got to get everyone's voices heard, right? You know who those people are. They like you just need to hear how they respond. Even asking some simple questions. Like I saw this online once. It was just like somebody said, you can tell like the health of the culture of an organization by asking people, what are your Sunday nights like? And if they say like, yo, I got the Sunday scaries big time, then maybe there's something up with the culture or something up with their role that we need to check in on them about. But if they're like, you know what, I can't wait for Monday, right? It's really tough to be excited for a Monday. I get it, but there's a difference between being about Monday and being scared of Monday. Those are some of the simple questions that you can be asking just in passing as you're walking around the district that you are joining. All right. Feel free to come to keep coming into the chat with some of your takeaways. I would love to continue to hear it. Like I said, this is something that we work on all of the time at Education Elements. And sometimes people will come to us out of the blue through a webinar even to say like, hey, I'm going through this transition and I want to work with you on phase 2, right? Well, good thing we've got a lot of material on that. We've got a lot of experience doing that. But sometimes it comes from our clients who are going through a transition right now. And they're like, hey, I've loved working with you guys, but it's time for me to retire. What do you think I should do? And then we get to work with you in a different way. So beyond transition planning, want to share some of the other things that we work on. We really focus on instruction a lot. I do a lot of work with personalized and blended learning, instructional frameworks, a lot of that. We also do help districts every handful of years get ready for how do they build their strategic plan? How do they plan for ESSER funding or other funding? What is your curriculum strategy? We love working with leaders, preparing them for transitions, developing your pipeline, et cetera. And we also have an arm that really has an effective survey component where they get to really tell you about the health of your district. And then we use that information to do those other boxes that you see or other columns that you see on the screen. Anyway, I wanted to say thank you all for being such a great group today. It has been a lot of fun having this conversation. Please get your phone out and take a picture of that QR code to sign up for future webinars. Or if you would like, please email me. I am always around to just say, like, hey, phase 2, I really like the idea of it, but I don't have 100 days. I got 50 days. What do I do? I'd love to have that conversation with you. Or you're like, you know what, we really just need someone to be the outside voice to look at us as we start writing down our roles and responsibilities. We do that for people as well. So please let us know if there's anything we can do, or if you just want to continue the conversation. I would love that.